Hi, this is Abbie Unger from Flight Attendant Career Connection, back with another video to help you land that flight attendant job. So today we're going to be talking about resumes. This video is actually part one of a two-part series, so when you're done with this one, make sure you go on and you watch the next one so that you can get the full effect and you can have all the information you need to create your own resume. Now, flight attendant resumes are special because it's your first foot in the door, right? If you can't have a resume that can make it through the computer screening or the HR screening, then you're never going to get your chance to pitch yourself and sell yourself and go to that interview. So that's why your resume is important. And you need to create a resume that is just for the airlines. So if you're broadening your search a little bit and you are applying to jobs that are flight attendant or on the ramp or customer service for an airline, then these tips will all work for all of those. So you want to make sure, though, that in your objective that you have the right job title. You wouldn't want to say, my objective is to land a job as a flight attendant, and then you send it into a customer service ticket agent kind of job. You would want to change that up, right? So, but the skills are similar and kind of translate across the board. So if you are looking kind of outside the box of just becoming a flight attendant as a first step, then all these tips are going to work for pretty much any airline resume. Not so much for a pilot because that's a whole different skill set. It's a whole different thing. I'm not even going to pretend I know how to do any of that. But as far as other airport jobs, airline jobs, and of course flight attendant jobs, but I am going to be talking from the perspective of a flight attendant for our tips for today. So, like I said, the resume is your first step in the door. That's why it's really, really important. If you can't even get your resume and your skills to match what they're looking for, then you're never going to have a chance to tell them that your personality and your skills are perfect. So that's why you really do need to put a little bit of time investment into your resume. So first I want to talk about what not to put in your resume. So first, no pictures, unless the airline requests pictures of you, which some non-U.S. carriers will request pictures. For example, Emirates wants a headshot and a full body shot. They want to know what you look like. Here in the United States, you're not going to include a picture. In fact, Southwest, when they just accepted applications this last time, they said, please don't include your picture. It messes up our system and it's going to get kicked out. So if you hadn't followed the directions and you'd put a graphic or a picture in there, then it would have kicked it out. So another thing that you don't want to include is anything that's sort of like an identifier as far as your sex, your race, your marital status, whether or not you have children. These are all things that are protected by sort of like the Fair Hiring Act and things like that. So you don't need to put your race on there. Your name, usually we can tell if it's a girl or a boy, but you don't need to list these things, that you're divorced, that you're married, that you have kids, that you don't have kids, that they're grown, that they're not. None of this really needs to go on your resume. In fact, some airlines may throw it out if it has like a race or an age or something else that they could be kind of called down for discrimination. They sometimes won't even evaluate those resumes just to protect themselves so that you as an applicant couldn't come back and say, oh, you didn't hire me because it says I'm 50. So they sometimes can't even consider those. So you want to keep it no kind of identifiers as far as your age, your race, your sex, things like that they would be worried about discrimination about. So you don't want to put any of that on there. You also don't need to put references on there. Some airlines will ask for references. Some airlines just use your previous employers as references when they run the 10-year background check. So you don't really need to put references on there. I would have a couple references just sort of that you know about, that you've talked to, that you've said, this is what I'm going to be doing. You may get a phone call because sometimes in the application they ask for references, but you don't really need to put that on your resume. You also don't need to put references available upon request because of course they are, right? So you just leave it off. It's extra. It's not needed. And then the last thing you don't really need to put on there is hobbies. So if you have a hobby that you love to do, it may fall under another section like volunteer work or something, but they don't need to know that you love ballroom dancing and reading or whatever it is that your hobby is, because unless it's like a skill that really, really matters, like if you're, I mean, there's almost no hobby that wouldn't translate into volunteer work if it was really skill. Like if you were a volunteer firefighter and that was kind of your hobby, then you would put that in your volunteer work. So you don't really need to have a narrative about your hobbies. Okay, so that's what not to put in there. So now, what do you put in there? So first you want to include your name, so your name and your address, your phone number and your email address need to go at the top of the page centered. If your email address is hotstuff213, you need a new email address, okay? So your name is best. Or it could be, it's okay if it's something cute, Beach Girl 335 or something like that. You could get a new one that was more professional if you want to, but make sure it's not inappropriate, silly, or, like Blunt Times 420 or something, that has like a drug reference or something like that maybe you got a long time ago, because they will be drug testing you no matter what your email address is. But we just want to be thinking about that. You don't want to put anything that is not professional or inappropriate as your email address. You can get a free email address, which you probably know, Gmail, Yahoo. They'll get you a free email address and you will be set with one that is completely appropriate. So that's what's going to go at the top. You also want to include an objective, so that's next. And your objective will be what your objective is, of course. Now, this is going to be some sentences. This is where sentences go in your resume. You would put something like, for mine, I would say, my objective is to secure a position as a flight attendant where I can use my skills and experience working in a banking environment, serving customers, and following safety and security protocol to serve and represent my airline. Okay, I'm sort of winging it off the top of my head, but that's what I want to do. I want to make it personalized to me, and then I would say something like, I understand the responsibilities of a flight attendant. I am excited about relocating to my new crew base, period. I'm letting them know I'm going to move. I've reviewed the qualifications, such as 2 years of customer service experience, cash handling experience, and teamwork, period. I feel like these are 3 of my strong suits, and I know that I will be an excellent flight attendant candidate. Okay? So that's sort of what, like I said, I was sort of winging it based on mine. I worked for a bank before I became a flight attendant, so that's why I was using sort of the banking aspect of it. But you just want to be able to name a couple of your skills, talk about the fact that you've really considered them and that you're going to represent them well, that you're planning to relocate or you're excited to relocate. Those kinds of things go in your objective. 2 or 3 sentences, not super long. Then the next thing you're going to put is your experience. And this is where all of your job experience goes, in the experience section. The way, so as you're kind of right now, we're just sort of in the information collecting stage of our resume. So I want you to start writing down or typing out the different jobs you've had. You want a 10-year complete history. So you don't have to have everything that you did in the last 10 years. Let's say you worked at a bank for 5 years, but then you worked at Bath & Body Works during the holidays 1 year. You don't necessarily have to put that in there because you're going to already have that 5-year chunk covered. Now, retail is good experience, though, so if you don't have retail anywhere else, you may consider adding it in. But what you really want is 10 years with no gaps. If you were a stay-at-home mom, then add that in as an entry, Unger family, stay-at-home mom. So that would work, and then you would put some of your job descriptions there. Or if you had volunteer work, during that time, you could put that too. So PTA president for 5 years while I was a stay-at-home mom, I could put that in as an experience as well. But I want to try to have 10 years complete with no gaps. Because if you were caring for a family member, you could put that in. Now, you will have an opportunity to fill out a complete job history that is a 10-year job history, and that's for your background check. This is not exactly the same thing because you don't have to have all your jobs on there, but it just makes it easier and cleaner if you can have 10 years. If that falls into school, then that's fine. That goes into your education. So just if you were in high school or college 7 years ago, then just put your jobs to 7 years, and then when we get to education, we'll fill in the gaps, okay? So that's your jobs. I also want you to be thinking about, for every job you did, not the job description of the job, but the skills you did in the job that will translate over to being a flight attendant. So, for example, if you were a medical office receptionist, okay, so your job duties would be to greet patients, all right, that's a good one for a flight attendant. It would be to file paperwork. I mean, you could put that in there, but then I also want you to think about the fact that you were keeping the lobby tidy and safe, or that you made sure that the patients were able to get home on their own. Like, these things may not be listed in the job description, but these were skills that you used. So I want you to be kind of thinking outside the box. If you were a teacher, you were familiar with the evacuation procedures. In fact, you were empowered to probably begin an evacuation if needed, right? Now, that's not what we consider teacher job description, but that's something that you did that you would do as a flight attendant. So that's what I want you to be thinking about. Okay, so then we're going to move on to education. Now, this is education / certifications / recognitions. So it kind of depends on what your background is, how many of these you'll have. But this is where you put your education, of course, so your high school, any college that you had, any sort of certifications that you have. So if you were a realtor, if you were lifeguard trained, CPR and first aid trained, you would want to put that on there as a certification. Any kind of recognition, like if you won a special award, like I got Teller of the Month. I put that in my recognition section at the bottom. It's just sort of special things that you've done. And they don't have to be work related. If you were CPR certified just for fun or for your own personal well-being, then you would put that in there under your certifications. Okay, so those are the things that you're going to need: an objective, your experience, and then sort of your education certification / recognitions go at the bottom. Now, that's the order that I want them in. Even if education was last, like if you just graduated from college, that still needs to go at the bottom because education doesn't matter as much. It's not weighted as heavy for a flight attendant position as experience. So we want experience first and then education at the bottom. This is also a place that the education certification, I was talking about some of your hobbies. Let's say you love to run, but you completed a marathon. You could put that in there. You could say, rock and roll marathon completed 2005. So you wouldn't want to put that you have a hobby of running, but that's a huge achievement that you've made. So you could put that down there in the bottom because it's something that you have achieved. So those are the things that you need to include in your resume. You may be wondering what I'm going to say about cover letter, because I haven't said cover letter, right? I don't do cover letters for flight attendant resumes. JetBlue seems to like the cover letters, though. So if I was applying to JetBlue, I would take my objective and I would turn it into a cover letter. So I would basically just so it looks like a letter, so Dear JetBlue Recruiting Team, and then I would use my objective, and I would probably open it up with, thank you for taking the time to review my resume. My objective is to land a job as a flight attendant where my skills and experience, so basically the same thing, and then at the bottom I could say, thank you so much for considering me. I look forward to talking to you soon. Sincerely, Abbie Unger. That is how you could do a cover letter if you wanted to. You don't need a cover letter. Do not put any information in your cover letter that is not repeated in your resume. I sometimes see people putting their second language, like they're fluent in English and Spanish. That would go in your objective, but I sometimes see it in your cover letter and not anywhere in your resume. What if they got separated, or what if the airline doesn't care about cover letters? Then they don't know this huge piece of information about you. So you're going to want to make sure that you don't have any information on the cover letter that's not repeated in your resume, because that's important that they, in case they get separated, or if the airline doesn't even consider it. Like Southwest, when they accepted applications, well, resumes. In 2013, they didn't want to cover, they just wanted a resume. There was no application, there was nothing. They said, just send us a resume. So that's why I really like a really clean resume. Those are the tips for what you're going to include and not include in your resume. Now, please watch part 2, and I'm going to talk about how to format it and how you should make it look, and also I'll talk a little bit about keywords, which is what the airline computer is looking for when they screen your information. Now, just as a reminder, please join the Facebook group if you haven't already, Flight Attendant Career Connection. You can find more information on the products and resources that we offer at www.flightattendantcareerconnection.com. And our company does offer resume rewrites for aspiring flight attendants for a fee. The information's on the website if you're interested. And I look forward to seeing you in video 2. Have a great day.